If you carry a firearm and discharge your weapon in self-defense, you could face hundreds of thousands of dollars in legal fees and expenses. So carry the protection of CCW Safe, Self-Defense Legal Services membership. Upfront payment of all criminal and civil defense costs with no out-of-pocket for members.
We're back. I'm Chris Evans, the CEO of Survival Dispatch, joined tonight by my good friend Jeff MD, 26 years CIA case officer, internally known as 007, very affectionately 007, author extraordinaire too. Those are his books behind him. And below us, our good friend Randy Nance, back home in Texas, combat wounded, Green Beret, official carnival spokesperson. Also very thankful to Father Duck for a new microphone that he sent Randy. And now I'm going to turn it over to Randy. He's going to sing a tune for us before we get.
You know, if I could remember all the words, I would sing the Dogface Soldier song for you. Not really.
Are we going to do karaoke night now?
That's right. Oh, you don't want to hear me sing. No, let's just put it that
way. Yeah, well, that makes two of us. Anyway, tonight we've got the next episode in our long war series. We're going to be discussing bio and chem warfare in a post 9/11 2.0 in environment, I guess. But before we get to that, we're going to do the conflicted question of the day. Let me get the boys up on stage here. And if you're not familiar with this, conflictedthegame.com, 14 card decks set in post-apocalyptic scenarios. Most of them have some element of morality, hence the name Conflicted. I'm going to read this question off. We'd love to see your answers in the live chat or the comment section down below. We're going to give you our answers at the end of the podcast. Lieutenant Colonel Barone felt like he needed to rally his men around his cause to strengthen the bonds between them and himself. During his speech, he asked if being a patriot meant being loyal to one's country or one's government. Can you be a patriot if you are only loyal to either your country or government and not both? So in my mind, Randy, when I read that, every time I see the word patriot, I think real American TM Randy Nance.
That's right. That's right.
How are the royalty
we
sales?
all know the answer to this.
Yes, we do. How are your royalty sales this week for the real American stuff?
They're doing well, I guess.
All right. So we're going to jump into tonight's sit rep, and we're going to start out with a very interesting session on the Hill today with NCTC Director Joe Kent. So that's the National Counterterrorism Center. And he announced today that there's at least 18,000 known and suspected terrorists that the Biden administration let come in, not including the ones who walked across the border. We have zero intelligence on. Oh, by the way, these 18,000 ISIS and Al Qaeda soldiers, we have no idea where they are because Biden just turned them loose. Well, Biden. This is a 2-minute and 43-second video. I'm going to play the whole thing because if you have a group of people, your family, let's say, have been, poo-pooing your discussions with them on 9/11 2.0, send them this video. This is the kind of video that I actually hate because it verifies, it vindicates what we've been saying. And by vindicating what we've been saying, that's a worst case scenario for the country and for everybody else. So let's listen to Joe here.
We've made significant progress under President Trump's leadership. We have the jihadis of ISIS and Al Qaeda on the run in Iraq and Syria, thanks to the decisive action and the strikes that we've taken there recently since President Trump took office in January. However, we have a persistent threat from the individuals that were allowed into this country by the previous administration. The number one threat that we have right now, in my view, is the fact that we don't know who came into our country in the last 4 years of Biden's open borders. What we have identified is alarming, and I want to share that with you today. We just recently put out a warning of the heightened risk of terrorist attacks posed to the homeland by terrorists pretty much of all stripes, but in particular from ISIS and from Al-Qaeda. NCTC has been crunching the numbers and going through the sheer volume of known and suspected terrorists that are in the country that came in under the Biden administration. So far, NCTC has identified around 18,000 known and suspected terrorists that the Biden administration let come into our country. These are individuals who under normal circumstances would never be allowed to enter our country because of their ties to jihadi groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda. Yet the Biden administration not only let them into the country, and in many cases facilitated their entry into the country, just like the entry of the Afghan terrorists who committed the terrorist attack here just before Thanksgiving, killing one of our National Guard members and wounding another. That Afghan was brought into the country as a group of over 100,000 Afghans who were brought here during the disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. These individuals, despite what has been reported, were not vetted properly to come into the United States. The individual terrorist who committed the attack in DC, he was vetted to serve as a soldier in Afghanistan. The Biden administration essentially used his tactical level vetting as a ruse to bring him here and to bring him into our communities. And we've seen the tragic results of that. Now, that Afghan, that attacker, that terrorist is just one of 88,000. We've identified 2,000 of that group of 88,000 who have ties to terrorist organizations. We're working right now hand in hand with DHS and with the FBI to run down this 2,000, the Afghans who came here under Allies Welcome who have ties to terrorist organizations, and additionally the other 16,000 individuals with ties to terrorist organizations that Biden let into our country. That is probably the top terrorist threat that we face right now, and that doesn't include the individuals who came here illegally through the open border. That number alarmingly remains unknown at this time. We're trying to figure out who those individuals are as well.
Wow. I mean, gobsmacking. Let me get everybody up on the other stage here. Jeff, I'm going to come to you first. Thoughts on 18,000 known terrorists or terrorist associates confirmed, plus no idea how many came in and were even, they weren't processed.
Well, sadly, it's what we've been talking about. When you let in millions upon millions of people and you don't vet any of them, bad guys who want to get in your country will use that as a way to get in your country. Shocking. I mean, it'd be like having a school and saying, and announcing, by the way, we're not checking in who comes and goes, and you can just hang out on the playground if you want to. Well, guess what? Pedophiles are going to go, cool, let me go to that school. And that's what we've seen. And Europe, too. Europe's no better.
Absolutely not. Randy, over to you. Let me put this up quickly, though, so we can say thank you to Father Buck. He's giving you your real American residual fear.
That's right. That's right. I'm sorry, what was the question?
No, just your thoughts on Joe Kent's speech.
Well, I mean, we have been saying it, but it is, the problem is this is common sense, folks. If this was our neighborhood back on the block, and everybody had one, or let's say when you were in school, there was one school that won every year in football. Everybody wants to beat them, right? Everybody wants to beat them every year. And then they play the best game like it was a district playoff game or something every time that team steps on the field. Well, you have to realize that's what the United States of America is to the world. We're the best there is. And if you don't think, if you just open the doors and then you send out little invites to send us your worst every country, that they're not going to do that, and certainly our enemies, why would you not just think about that for a second? Do you really think that our enemies are going to go, well, this is a mistake, they don't really mean it, we're not going to send them? Well, the 30,000 Chinese prove it. And this is exactly why, because it was allowed to happen. And that's the only way it would happen. This is the only way that would have happened. And that is why it is so detrimental that it was allowed to happen. And I don't know why. I know, they said when we're going to start this deportation, and I'm in favor of get them all out. I don't care who they are. And I don't care if they're still law-abiding citizens when they're here. If you're here illegally, you're here illegally. But I do believe, as I know the rest of the panel here does, this is where we should have started. We're going to start deporting folks. Let's go get these guys out of the country like pronto.
Yeah, good point. Absolutely, Randy. So moving on to the next one here. This is actually a post from Joe Kent, and I'm going to read it off, and it's going to take just a minute to get through it. But this holiday season, the National Counterterrorism Center is working vigilantly with interagency partners to counter any potential terrorist threats of violence, rapidly sharing intelligence with law enforcement at all levels to spotlight ongoing and new dangers and ensure Americans are kept safe from terrorist extremists. Under President Trump's guidance, we've intensified efforts to detect and expel terrorists who were welcome to our homeland via the Biden administration's ineffective immigration system. Recent disruptions, like the ISIS-linked plot foiled in Michigan over Halloween and the deadly terrorist attack carried out by an improperly vetted Afghan against 2 National Guard service members in Washington, D.C. over Thanksgiving, remind us of the risk these unchecked threats pose to holiday crowds and events. NCTC equips law enforcement and leaders across the United States with the intelligence and tools needed to combat these terrorist extremists, including radical Islamist extremists like AQAP, which is Al Qaeda, Arabian Peninsula, by the way, who have ramped up online calls for attacks this year. This intel sharing helps law enforcement hunt terrorist threats and safeguard our people by empowering local law enforcement to protect our communities so the American people can worship and celebrate in peace this holiday season. Under the leadership of Donald Trump and ODNI, Tulsi Gabbard, we at NCTC will tirelessly hunt down and eliminate terrorist threats and ensure they have no safe harbor in our country. With relentless pursuit and constant vigilance, we will keep our holidays safe, and we will not allow terrorists to undermine our culture. More unclassified counterterrorism resources for responders are at dni.gov. So coming right back to you, Randy, since you're center stage, it's too late. I mean,
Yeah,
it's too late, man.
Man, yeah, you're right. The fact that when you got to the part that they give local law enforcement throughout the country the tools. Oh, so that's why you told them this is coming, right? That's why no law enforcement agency believes that this attack is coming in the country, because they're not getting it from the federal government, this is exact office that it would start. This would be at the top of the hill. So if they're supposed to do that, they're not doing a good job. And it is too late, because the reality is, if these guys were going to pick a magic moment to be the worst moment in history that would far surpass September 11th and even Pearl Harbor, would be right before Christmas, because it's the Christian holiday and they're Muslims. And that would be the biggest, thumb in your face, whatever they want to call it, type of thing. That would be the biggest slight that they could hand us. And so it's in December. So if you're just now saying this today, well, it's too late, because unless you're going to get out those 18,000 in the next 2 weeks,
Yeah.
if they're not going to do that, then it is too late. Now, maybe for next year, that's if nothing happens. So,
well, we're not going to hold our breath on that. I just want to quickly thank Thomas here. I appreciate it very, very much. Thank you for the support. We really do appreciate it. And I'll add to what Randy said, just in that the attack window, according to Khalid, is opening here very shortly, within the next week. And up until today, we'll find out tomorrow what the effects are. But up until today, local law enforcement, state law enforcement, we get a ton of emails from people, and they've all said the exact same thing, with the exception of maybe a handful of agencies, where people have gone to their superiors, spoke about the intelligence that Khalid has brought to the table, and their superiors have turned around and said, well, the feds have said nothing, so I don't believe this. It's not happening. I've been saying long before we met Khalid that you can't have the front door wide open for 4 years and think no shitbags came across the border with bad intentions towards us. That's just insanity. Unfortunately, we do have this clip from Joe now, Joe Kent, who, by the way, is good friends with Mike Glover. And what I'm getting at here is it's too little too late. So we will probably still have small law enforcement, local and county agencies, state agencies who don't believe this, even after today, because it's been deny, 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 deny. And I know part of the reason why that denial has been happening, and I'm going to drop that bomb sometime in the next couple of weeks. But until then, suffice it to say, too little, too late. Jeff, your thoughts? You're on mute, Jeff.
Yeah, no, you're still going to have those local officials who aren't going to believe it. Even though it came from NCTC, they're going to say, well, but the FBI didn't tell me that. Well, Homeland Security didn't tell me that. And again, if you're confronted with a problem, you're not mentally or physically or financially prepared to actually do anything about, it's easier for humans to just pretend it isn't happening. It's like the people, there's a wildfire coming for their house and they're still out there mowing the grass. It's like when they should be getting their asses packed up and get out of there.
Well, what you just described, Jeff, is the normalcy bias that we've mentioned countless times. Kicking in. I'm dying to hear your thoughts on the next one here, Jeff, because I have some thoughts on it, but I don't want to throw them out there and color anybody else's comments just yet. So from Jim Ferguson, breaking news, Pacific Flashpoint is forming and everyone just chose sides. Today was not routine naval movement. It was a strategic declaration. China's Liaoning carrier strike group, reinforced by joint Chinese-Russian bomber formations, has maneuvered directly into waters near Japan at the very moment Tokyo asserts readiness to defend Taiwan alongside the United States. This was a message, and every regional player heard it. What it signals: Beijing is preparing for more than rhetoric. Moscow is now openly acting as a Pacific force multiplier. North Korea is posturing in the background with missile readiness. Japan has triggered its existential threat doctrine. The U.S. Indo-Pacific Command is being forced into rapid alignment. This isn't symbolic positioning. A carrier strike group doesn't move without intent. Strategic bombers don't appear in formation without rehearsal. This is shaping the pre-crisis map. 3 nuclear armed states, China, Russia, North Korea, now signaling a unified posture against Japan, Taiwan, and the American security umbrella that protects them. We have entered into a phase where one mistake becomes confrontation, one miscalculation becomes escalation, one strike becomes a regional war. The Indo-Pacific is no longer tense. It is approaching ignition temperature. The question isn't whether a line has been crossed. The question is who crosses it next. Jeff, give me your thoughts on this mess. You're on mute.
A lot of this is to be expected once Japan came out and said, we're going to support Taiwan. The Chinese get butthurt anytime anybody says anything about Taiwan. Mm-hmm. And this is their way of saber rattling. Why the Russians are getting involved, I have no clue. They can't really do squat. I mean, all their land forces are pretty much committed in Ukraine, and they can't pull them for anywhere else because it leaves their borders unguarded. Their bomber fleet are probably bears glorified late or mid 50s technology, not wonderful, but they can launch cruise missiles and things like that. But they are not a particularly imposing force. And then, of course, North Korea, of course, they have nukes and they have IRBMs that can hit targets in the region. But I'm sure the Japanese are well aware of this. I'm sure they expected this to a certain extent. Does it mean war? No, not necessarily, because they all have such deep economic ties. It would cost them all too much money to start a freaking war. But historically, the Chinese hate Japan because Japan invaded them in World War II. The Koreans hate Japan because Japan had basically occupied and colonized Korea for about 50 years leading up to World War II. And then Russia doesn't like Japan because the last time they fought a one-on-one war, which was 1905, Japan kicked their ass. So they all have a score to settle. And the Russians really didn't get involved with Japan in World War II. They only threatened at the very, very end of the war so they could get in on the on the finish and take the Kuril Islands. It was just a land grab for them.
So one thing, our good friend, Pastor Sean Moon, is actually in Taiwan right now. He's been there for somewhere around 9 months. And I speak to him frequently, and they're very concerned about things in Taiwan. But let me ask you this question, Jeff. We've got to carry the, Gerald Ford carrier group tied up with this Venezuela thing. And we've got 9/11 2.0 on the doorstep. Would it not make sense for the Chinese, at least, that if all hell breaks loose here with 9/11 2.0, to try and take Taiwan at that point in time?
Yeah, potentially, but they also run the risk of someone who deciding to defend Taiwan, and then if it's so overwhelming, they use the only option available, which might be tactical nukes or something like that. But our fleet in the Asian theater, for lack of a better word, is really not going to be involved with Venezuela at all. I mean, we've got 13 aircraft carriers, and there's probably 6, 7, 8 aircraft carrier groups out there at any given time. So, if 9/11 2.0, yeah, is it going to be crippling? Is it going to affect carrier operations in Asia? Probably not. So they run the risk of, if they attack our fleet, those fleets have nukes too. We have nuclear submarines, and there's nukes on those aircraft carriers.
One last question, just asking you to speculate. It was around 6 months ago or so, the Chinese said that they had hypersonic missiles and they could take out all 13 of our carriers inside of 20 minutes. Hyperbole, posturing, some element of truth? Where do you? Okay.
Because they don't have those missiles are fast, but they don't necessarily have that kind of range. You can go Mach 6, but you can't go Mach 6 or very far. Gotcha. So they have to have a way to deliver those missiles within their range against every carrier in the United States that we have, some of whom are at port, which means you're going to be launching missiles on our homeland. And once you do that, all bets are off. And I think they know it.
So this is way outside of my wheelhouse, but did I not read or hear that there were hypersonics that we have, China has, and Russia has, where they go so high in the altitude that essentially gravity propels them on their way back down again?
Yeah, they're called ICBMs. All ICBMs are hypersonic. Every single ICBM is a hypersonic nuclear delivery system. The hypersonic missiles they're talking about are hypersonic in level flight. Okay. Our ICBMs come in at like 14,000 miles an hour.
Wow. Okay. See,
they can hit anywhere in the world in 45 minutes.
Okay. Very interesting. I knew you'd have the dirt on that.
But the thing is, our ICBMs have MIRVs. One missile, multiple warheads.
Right.
Yeah. Have not heard of any hypersonic that has that. It's one missile, one warhead.
I appreciate that, Jeff. Randy, your thoughts on this mobilization?
Well, it just goes, I mentioned last night, I think it was, we can go back to when Ukraine kicked off the pipeline and all that stuff that happened during the Biden years. China and Russia cozied up to each other like we've never seen before. Not in my lifetime, and certainly not before, and it makes sense because Jeff's right. If you look back in history, Japan's whipped their ass, every one of them, every time they fought. I think China was like 4 times in history. Now one of those times from China, a hurricane dealt with a very large portion of the armada that was going to besiege them. And, that helped out greatly. But Japan has beat China 4 times. And, they may be our only real ally, so to speak, as in because an enemy of your enemy is my friend, right? Type of thing. Although we've gotten along with Japan beforehand, I would say at this point, we don't really know where they exactly stand either, and so, I think it's not a good thing, but I think Jeff's probably right that this is more kind of a posturing to say, hey, look, we are teaming up, because I've never heard of them training together in such a way. And again, they're right. You don't move anything like even my task force, which was an infantry battalion, but also now had chemical guys, had a company of tanks, had a company of engineers, and then we also had some chemical folks. And all of us made a little training run, probably a week before we actually rolled across the berm together in that element. And so that was one. I know people have heard me talk about the story. This is on that training. We were out in it lasted probably 4 or 5 hours long, longest drive in the desert I probably will ever take. And, past a couple of skeletons are just out in the middle of nowhere. You can't see them till you drove right past. But it's also where I saw the highway of death, where I know that, to this day, they still have the bones and the vehicles. They never cleaned that mess up from Desert Storm, the famous highway of death where we smoked it. We drove right past that. So them taking a little trail run, it could mean something, but, always come down to now them teaming up is never going to be good for us, but both of them suck at the end of the day. Their tactics and their equipment, and frankly, I think the only reason the Russians beat or were able to hold off the Germans, one, because we did finally enter the war that changed everything. But even previously to that is because of the mistakes that Hitler made, and then not even the first attack in there got within 19 miles of Moscow. And a little known fact is, Stalin already had the terms of surrender written up because it was a foregone conclusion this was about to happen. But that's as far as they got when winter set in. And I think over 100 or 200,000 German soldiers froze to death. But the Russian tactics were just to throw more bodies at it. There are no real tactics. They don't care how many lives it cost. And that's the difference between us and Russia, besides that they're, the tactical advantages and the equipment advantages that we have. The other part is we actually have strategy other than throw every live body you can throw at it until you overwhelm the target. So.
Yeah, I don't know if you caught it or not, but you're a real American.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, guys.
Cindy will make sure that gets to you, by the way. not joking either. All right, next one up. This is Dr. Oz. I'm not a big fan of Dr. Oz for a whole bunch of reasons. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. You've probably heard the news by now. Minnesota fraudsters stole over $1 billion from Medicaid, and you deserve an explanation. Instead of me reading this extremely long article, I'm going to play this video, which is 1 minute and 34 seconds.
It's true. A Somali fraud ring in Minnesota stole over $1 billion from Medicaid. How did this happen? Well, Medicaid programs are run by the states, which in Minnesota means the Tim Walz administration. Governor Walz and the state's other Democrats rely on Somali votes to get elected. So they decided to look the other way because they were afraid of, quote unquote, political backlash. Don't take my word for it. That's what a Somali American fraud investigator told the New York Times. When these scammers realized that nobody was guarding the cash register, they went gangbusters. One program designed to provide housing stabilization assistance to patients ballooned to $104 million, when 4 years ago it was projected to cost only $2.6 million. Some of these taxpayer funds may have even ended up in the hands of a Somalian terrorist group. Scary stuff. When CMS became aware of the housing program situation, Minnesota insisted it could clean up its own mess. A few months ago, it admitted it could not. So we stepped in to shut down the fraud-infested housing initiative. Today, we're taking action on more than a dozen other programs, which I've outlined in the post below. Our message to Walz is clear. Either fix this in 60 days or start looking under your couch for spare change, because we are done footing the bill for your incompetence. This administration will never stop fighting to protect the vulnerable Americans who rely on these programs and the taxpayers who fund them. We're going to crush waste, fraud, and abuse.
All right, coming right back to you, Randy. So, question for you here. How do you think the unchecked illegal immigration and lack of verification systems during the Biden admin plays into all of this?
Well, it's no different than the SNAP went from just, like, what was it? Less than 20 million, right? To over 40 something or whatever it was during the incident. I think they ballooned all that stuff out. And, that's just the Medicaid he's talking about there in Tim Walz's state. Because the truth is, I heard this morning, and I don't remember where it was, but the overall cost, because that's not the only thing that they were gigging. It's around $10 billion that have been funneled out of there, out of that state to Somalians. So you're going to think about with a B. That's a lot of money, as you talk about. And I love you. That's the example I always use and have for several years, because people don't understand between a million, a billion, and a trillion. But $10 billion of our taxpayer money, certainly for that state, you know what I mean? It's just ridiculous. And that no one has said a word about it or stopped it. It's craziness.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Just a quick explanation what Randy was mentioning there. If you had $1 million and converted it to seconds, it's 11 days. If you had $1 billion converted to seconds, you would have 31.67 years. If you had $1 trillion and you converted it to seconds, you would have 31,667 years. So that gives you some idea of the relativity. And when Randy says $10 billion, is not hard to do the math. It's over 310,000 years essentially. So we're talking big numbers, right? So Jeff, coming back to you here, quick question for you. And sorry, that's 310 years. It would be 31,000 if it was trillions. How many other states?
Still long enough.
Yeah. How many other states do you think reckon this is happening? And Jeff, and you're on mute.
How many states are governed by blue governors?
I knew you were going to say that.
Well, I mean, let's
Right
get
answer.
real. People will steal if you let them steal. And blue Democrat governors tend to let people steal.
Fair enough.
Well, certainly when they're on the right side, correct? I mean,
Well, the left side.
yeah. That's what I mean.
Short, sweet, and to the point. So let me see who posted this. I can't remember again. MJ Truth Ultra. So holy shit, how is this okay? The president of the World Jewish Congress just sent a warning to every potential America First candidate wishing to run for U.S. Congress. If you do not support Israel, if you platform or say anything we deem anti-Semitic, we will target them and start a fund for their opponent. Christians need to call this out. This is outrageous. I am so sick of the government of Israel interfering in our politics. This is not okay. And if you think this is okay, my God. So this is a 56-second video. I'm going to play the whole video. But this is a great example of why you'll hear me say over and over and over again, I don't give a shit if it's Hamas, the Palestinians, any other ragheads, or Israelis. They need to just stay the F out of our frickin' country and out of our lives. I can't stand either side. This guy is a first-class piece of shit. 56 seconds.
Any candidate running for a seat in this building, whether for Congress or Senate, whose platform includes anti-Semitism, we will target them as they target us. Accordingly, we will start a fund to help their opponents. We cannot possibly sit by and let anti-Zionists determine our future. None of this will be easy. It will take time and effort.
Newsflash, asshole. This isn't all about you. This is about America. I just said his name. I can't remember what it is, but he's an asshole. That's who he is. Let me see if I got it.
Tell us what you really feel.
He's the president of the World Jewish Congress.
Oh, okay.
America first doesn't mean that you're anti anybody else. It means you're America first. I just despise this shit. My watch is going off right now. I got it on mute to say.
All of us. And Jews cannot fight this fight alone. Frankly, we shouldn't have to, because this is not a Jewish issue. It's a democratic issue. It's a moral issue. It's a human issue. Let us build a coalition so strong, so united, so determined that no extremist movement can fracture it. And above all, let us be bridge builders, unshakable.
Yeah, whatever. Shut your mouth. I'm coming back to you, Jeff, since you're center stage. How should Americans respond to this crap when foreign lobbying organizations openly threaten to target candidates based on foreign policy positions? This is the United States of America, not the United States of the world. These guys can go F themselves. God, this pisses me off.
Yeah, I mean, people can vote for whatever reason they want to vote. They can vote because they don't like the way you part your hair. It doesn't really matter. But with people like this, you need to say, Americans are entitled to have an opinion. And the fact that you don't like that opinion doesn't mean they're not entitled to it. So go pound sand. I would not expect, everybody in Israel to be 100% pro-United States either. It's like people have their, for various reasons, they can like or dislike any person or country or anything else. You're not going to change that by trying to admonish them like little kids. If anything, it's probably going to backfire on you. It's going to be like the Streisand effect. Oh, you don't want us to vote for that guy? Well, I don't like you, so maybe I will vote for that guy.
Yeah, good point. Randy, if this isn't undermining our sovereignty, I don't know what is. What do we do about this shit, man?
Well, I don't know. It comes down to the Constitution and then whatever the election laws are, right? But also, I think that have lobbyists always been around? They have since the beginning.
Well, yeah, people have lobbied since
the word lobbyist actually started in the 1860s, 1870s, when they would hang around the lobby of hotels in Washington, D.C., where politicians stayed, trying to grab them on their way to or from Capitol Hill so they could bend their ear and ask for favors. That's where the word comes from, literally from a lobby.
I believe those people today are known as hookers.
Well, that also came from the Civil War. They were called, John Hooker was the Union general, and they had all these prostitutes would follow his army, and they called them Hooker's Legion with the joke because all these prostitutes followed his army, and that's where the name Hooker comes from.
Was it at a truck stop by chance?
Well, they didn't have trucks back then, so.
It was at a stop, all right.
Yeah.
You got to keep the boys happy, right? I mean.
Yeah, so sorry, back to you, Randy. I mean, this completely undermines, in my opinion, undermines our sovereignty and our right to choose who our government is, not theirs.
Well, it only does if we let it. He can't do anything other than talk out his ass. Well, everybody does that anyway.
But they shouldn't be able to, is my point.
Well, if they're foreign, they shouldn't. No. But if he's an American citizen from New York and he wants to donate to people who support his agenda, that's called politics. And it's always been that way. Just we do the same thing. We contribute money to people we want to see in office because we think they're going to do, things that we approve of. That's what politics is.
I don't agree with that either. I think we should stay out of that sort of stuff. But here's from Doherty. That's a compliment for you, Jeff. Jeff is like the shell answer man. He knows it all.
Randy, a little bit about a lot of stuff.
Yes.
Well, I was just going to say that, lobbying is one of those things, certainly the way that it is handled today and the amount of money should be illegal and outlawed. There are a bunch of election laws and how they're bringing in money. And now these super PACs, that should not be allowed. We need to get rid of all that shit and make it illegal, because all it does is make the politicians richer. And what people wonder why they're not listening to your constituents anymore, because they don't have to. It's a joke to them. You are a joke to them, because reality is if the super PAC backs them, they're going to most likely be elected. And so, they'll have more money than they know what to do with. But this is our problem. It needs to go back to the people. It's no different than if you looked at, a congressman or senator's schedule. I think it's 2/3 of the time they're in DC, right? Handling federal issues. And it's probably only about, I think someone told me 12 days a year that they're able to work on their local, your state stuff. So just keep that in mind when you're electing them. They're not really doing much for your state. And apparently they're up there, self-serving themselves at the federal level. And that's what we have. So there's a lot of things we could do in politics to make them illegal where they can't do it, and then you'd have to, have somebody, we'd have to get an insider that told us the skinny on it all. Like back in the day when they hired Kennedy's dad, because, John F. Kennedy's dad wanted to be president, but he had too many known ties to organized crime. And so when they wanted to clean up the stock market, he had cleaned up. So when the feds wanted to clean it up, they went to him because he knew it the best. He knew how to rip it off the best. And he was able to tell them how to prevent that from happening. So that's what we would need as an insider to tell you this is what goes on in politics up on the Hill. This is how you could put things in to mitigate that. And then you also would have to pay attention, therefore, because, again, and term limits would help, because other than that, they're just going to find a way around it.
Yeah, well said. So our signal chat for our guardians is absolutely exploding tonight. Like, I mean, absolutely exploding. The volume of messages, especially related to Joe Kent's testimony today, is incredible. And a bunch of our guardians, and for those people who are wondering, if you go to survivaldispatch.news, you can sign up to be a guardian for $7.99 a month or $74.99 a year. You get 2.5 months for free. We built an entire community on Signal because it's open source. I'm a programmer by trade. I've confirmed that there are no back doors in it, and we can't be deplatformed or censored on it. So we have 6 channels over there that each have distinct purposes so people can quickly find the information they want. The main chat's called the Guardian chat, averages over 12,000 messages per week. The others relate to everything from survival, prepping, emergency notifications, security bulletins, all that kind of stuff. So speaking of all of that, for those of you who have been wondering where our good friend Khalid is, you may know that he was stabbed a few weeks ago, half an inch away from where he got stabbed. If he had been stabbed there, he wouldn't be with us today. He's still on the mend. He's nowhere near 100%. About a week ago, he was given permission to sit upright and do some work for about an hour a day. On top of which, 3 of his 4 safe houses have been hit by jihadis. This was a firefight that he got in, by the way, and it ended up in hand-to-hand combat when he got stabbed. So with that being said, when I spoke to Khalid earlier today, I said, you know what, man, like, if you could give us your rundown on what you think of today's events, I'm sure that the audience would appreciate that. So I'm going to bring that video up right now and play that before we jump into the main topic of the night. And it's a minute long here. Okay. It's 15 minutes long, but I'm going to give the stage over to Khalid so that y'all can hear what he's got to say. This is important information.
Hey everybody, Khalid here. I just wanted to catch you guys up on the fact that I am still alive. The rumors of my death have been greatly exaggerated. I am still living. I cannot say the same for the terrorists that we're after. They are pushing daisies at this point, and we're not stopping. I've been out of action for about 3 weeks now. I'm slowly getting back to normal health, and I should be back on SDN probably next week. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what Joe Kent said today in the DHS terrorism hearing. A lot of people have been talking about how we have been exaggerating the numbers, and that we've been saying that the threat is not real, that we've been fear-mongering in what we've been saying. I think what Joe said today with the 18,000 known unsuspected terrorists inside the United States that have come into the administration confirms everything that we've been saying. It was about 4 months ago that we did our first episode with Survival Dispatch, and we started talking about the homeland. And it was in that episode that I said there were 25,000 terrorists in the country. 18,000 is a hell of a lot closer to what people are supposing of around 5,000, 6,000. The difficult part here is to understand the fact that while people are going to say what they want to say and people are going to try and accuse us of things that we have not done, you need to understand, and everyone who's commenting on what we have to say on what is happening with the homeland threat, we're not talking shit. I am boots on the ground. We are in the neighborhood of exactly where all these terrorists are. And 99% of the time, we are actually in where they are. Having 400 assets inside of terror camps, many of them very close to senior leadership. gives us an inroad into knowing what's going on, when it's going on, and how it's going on. The thing that people need to understand is that there's a lot of noise out there. There are a lot of people trying to build fame for themselves, a lot of people trying to build a reputation for themselves, being Johnny on the spot. The thing people don't understand is that when you're talking intelligence, the more accurate and the more credible you are when you talk, the more people will listen to you. It's very easy to go out and start blowing up and saying, "Oh, there's this many people, there's this kind of attack, this kind of attack." I commented in the SDN channels about how people have been stealing our intelligence and trying to formulate ways into turning it into their own intelligence. In some cases, outright stealing Command 11's intelligence. It's really cute that people try and do that. The problem being that when you steal someone else's intelligence, you're talking out of your ass and you have no idea what you're talking about. When people start asking you questions, you don't know how to answer them. And what you've seen is that when you're talking to me, I actually know how to answer the question. I can tell you how the threat's going to manifest. I can tell you what's going on. I can tell you how it's going on. I can tell you where it's going on. Please learn to discern the noise and understand that people are going to try and take advantage of the situation, either to attempt to discredit people or trying to build a name for themselves. And those aren't the people that you listen to. True intelligence operatives understand that there are no pats on the back. And I said this in the Signal chat as well. Intelligence operatives don't get a pat on the back to say, "Oh, you did a great job and you were dead on." We don't get celebrated for when we're right. We get accosted for when we're wrong. And that's why we're so careful about what we put out publicly. Everything that we put out has the Command 11 name on it. When we're broadcasting on SDN, my face is out there. I'm the one talking about it. It's my credibility at risk. It's very easy to hide behind a keyboard and pretend like you know what you're talking about. And when you hide behind a keyboard, well, there's no accountability either. For me, the biggest problem is, and as you guys know, I was stabbed in a attack. Well, we were on a raid, and one of these little terrorist bitches got around and smacked me in the back and missed vital organs. And I'm very lucky that happened. But that's our reality. We're not sitting thousands of miles away reading and listening to and talking to people saying whatever they want to say. What's actually happening on ground is what we're seeing and what we're reporting to you. And I don't like the fact that I have to say it, but you really need to be really, really careful right now. We are coming into crunch time. And in crunch time, a lot of people are going to start taking sides. A lot of people are going to start pushing their own loyalties. This is not a time for loyalties. You are either attempting to save lives or you're trying to build a name for yourself and you're trying to build fame for yourself. And that doesn't work. Being based in Pakistan, a lot of people have questioned who we are and what we do, and who our allegiance is with. I find that quite hilarious. Since 2007, I've been fighting terrorism on the ground. I've been writing about it. I've been talking about it. I have been broadcasting about it. I have been on different news channels talking about it, both domestically and internationally. And for the past 5 months, we've been tied up with SDN. And I have the utmost respect for Chris. And we have done a lot of work to help people understand what's coming. The 3 weeks that I've been out of the game has been painful for me because I miss all of you guys. And there's a lot of things that have been happening. And I haven't been able to tell you what's going on and why it's going on. But next week, I'll be back. And when I come back, it'll come back with a lot of fire. But what Joe said today with 18,000 terrorists in the country, that kind of blows everybody out of the water. There have been a lot of people talking about how there's only 5,000 or 7,000 terrorists in the country. I think we now know they're full of shit. It's really easy to talk out of your ass when you don't know what you're talking about and to attempt to make people believe you're credible. You're not credible. 5 months ago, if you go back to the first episode that we did with SDN, the graphic I think Chris put out on the episode was 25,000 terrorists. That was 5 months ago. 5 months now, we've been talking about it in detail, breaking down step by step how the attack is going to happen, what to look for, what kind of problem you're going to see with terrorists, how they're going to manifest themselves, what indicators you should be looking for. No one has gone to the detail that we have with SDN. And if you think that I'm supporting the Taliban or I'm a Taliban agent, then you really have your head up your ass, because that's a very good way to die on my side, on this side of the world. Not only do we have the Taliban sitting in Afghanistan, but we have Pakistan's intelligence services, which if they found out that I was Taliban, I'd be gone within hours. So let's put that to rest. Anyone who's spreading that rumor that Command 11 is a agent of the Taliban, grow up. Our history clearly says who we are, what we've done, and how we've done it. And we have never supported terrorism. We have never stood by the terrorists, and we have never encouraged terrorism in any way, shape, or form. There's a lot happening. Next week, we're going to talk about the U.S. national security strategy that's come out. Probably the most useless 36 pages I've ever read. It's, from my point of view, a surrender document. There's also the Pacific Marine strategy that came out that echoes a lot of what's in the national security strategy, which also looks to me like it's a surrender document. The other thing we need to keep in mind is what's going on in Venezuela. The amount that the U.S. is dragging its feet on doing what it needs to do is increasing the threat to the United States. Because when you talk about TDA, you talk about Antifa, you talk about IRGC, you talk about Hezbollah, they're all getting their support from Venezuela. And as long as you keep dragging your feet on carrying out a strike and taking care of this problem, you're just increasing the threat to the U.S. And for the gentleman who wears the youth large windbreaker, that guy needs to go. I've said this many times, and I'm not hesitant to say it. And even though the U.S. is now talking about forcing people who are applying for visas, and we're applying for an investor visa to the U.S., they're talking about asking people who are applying for visas to submit their social media for review and scrutiny as to what we've said. So let me be really open and honest. Pam Bondi, Susie Wiles, Seb Gorka, Kash Patel, Tom Berenger, Steve Witkoff, it's time for you to go home. You're a threat to U.S. national security, and it's time for you to go home. This is not an ego exercise. You can take your youth large windbreaker and go home and do what you want to do and pretend like you know what you're talking about, but you are a threat to national security, and I've had enough. The FBI's games have been enough. You are not a counterterrorism department, and you have no idea what counterterrorism means. And the fact that you're going around and telling fusion centers that they shouldn't listen to Joe and they shouldn't listen to Delsey, that kind of says exactly what your caliber really is. So I'm sorry, I'm mixing a lot of points into one statement, but there's a lot going on. Next week when I come back, I'm gonna hammer. Now I see everything as a nail, and I'm gonna start hitting into those nails and driving them into the ground. Just be careful, guys. There's a lot of people talking. There's a lot of people trying to pass us dirty intelligence. I'm not going to mention who has or what they've passed us, but what happened with the video, it's obvious someone's trying to set us up as well at Command 11 and try and pass us intelligence that is obviously, compared to ground reality, incorrect. And the attempt is to get us to pass that information off under our logo, under our name, and they then turn around and discredit us. That's not going to happen. We're not little kids here. We've been at this for well over 20 years, well over 15 years now. We've learned how to read. We've learned how to vet. We've learned how to understand. We've learned how to put the intelligence out there that really is intelligence. It's not just rumor mongering. And when it is rumors, I say it openly. This is rumor. This is what we've heard. And when it's intelligence, I tell you with very open confidence, this is what's going to happen and how it's going to happen. So I appreciate all of you guys keeping me in your prayers. I appreciate all of you standing by us. I appreciate all of you guys keeping, keeping the faith, as we say. The war is coming, and the war is going to be much worse than what a lot of people are expecting. The people that are talking about this, and the people who are putting out threat assessments saying this is going to happen, this is going to happen. Go back to our May threat assessment, and you'll see everything they're saying is something we said back in May. And then go through our episodes on SDN over the past 4 months, 5 months, and you'll find out that everything that they're calling their own threat assessments has been broadcast live on the Survival Dispatch Network. And it's very easy to pretend you're an intelligence operative. Very easy when you're sitting 1,000 miles away, 2,000 miles away, 3,000 miles away from where the action is really happening. And you have no clue how to identify the people who are sitting on your soil that are a threat to your country. I really wish I was in the US right now. There's a lot of people I would clean up very quickly. But it's, I think, something around 3 a.m. here in Pakistan. And, I wanted to say hello. I wanted to catch up. I wanted to let you know I'm still alive. No matter who tries, they're not going to take me out. The battlefield is rich. It is a target-rich environment. We are working hard. Even though I'm not out there doing the raids anymore, our teams are operating. They are getting major successes. We'll talk about those next week when I come back to SDN. But be careful, guys. There's a lot of noise out there, and there's a lot of people trying to feed you information that's not true. And it's very difficult for people to discern what is and is not true. But Joe's statement today of 18,000 known or suspected terrorists inside the United States, 5 months ago, we told you 25,000. And that number that Joe gave, it's going to grow. It's not 18, it's well above 18. And Joe is still putting those numbers together. And if you remember, we stood very strong on that point that we wanted Joe Kent in that job as National Counterterrorism Council's chairman. And this is why. Because Joe knows what he's talking about. And we stand firmly by Joe. We stand firmly by Tulsi. And those people who are pretending that they know better than the two people that have been on the battlefield and fought for the United States against terrorism, they need to wake up and realize this is not a kid's game. And like I said, youth large, time to go home. You can go be a consultant. You can go pretend to be somebody important. But you're not important in the administration, and you're causing damage to the American people. You're causing a national security risk for the United States. And at the end of the day, it's going to be you I hold responsible. That's all I've got for you tonight. I'm still around. I'm still alive. I'll be back next week, and get ready.
So let me get you all back up here. Apologies for a second. I'll just get the Jeff's on mute. Randy's got his volume. So I'll come to you first, Randy. Do you want to make any comments on Khalid's statement other than just one thing? Did you look at him and say, holy shit, the John Deere hat's back?
Oh, the very first thought was he's got the John Deere hat on. And I know somebody asked what was so funny about a John Deere hat last time. It's not necessarily that it's a John Deere hat. We're not laughing at the John Deere hats. It's the one fact that Khalid in Pakistan had one on. So that was what was funny. Anyway, he covered a lot of ground there, and we're praying for him to get better, and look forward to having him back next week.
Yeah, 100%. Jeff, any comments on the information Khalid dropped?
He's serious when he breaks out the hat. So
I don't know if anybody's reminded him lately. You can't do BFEs here in America. Just saying. I mean, we'd like to, but you just can't do it. Not yet, at least. All right, there we go.
Yeah.
Apologies for that. So, like I said, we're going to jump into the main topic now. I'll speed things up a little bit since we spent some extra time tonight, but it was time well spent. And I'm happy that y'all got a chance to hear from Khalid. All right. So here we go. So this is episode number 70, 71, pardon me, out of 144 episodes that Cleve and I put together. And we purposely put them together in such a way that you could watch any of them at any point in time, in any order or not, and still get value from each episode. So the only piece of context that you need to understand the main topic is what is 9/11 2.0. And I'm going to cover it really, really fast tonight. 9/11 2.0 is intelligence from Cleve and his people that 10 to 15 American cities, tier 2 cities, population 100K to 500K, are going to be attacked simultaneously. The attack window looks like it's, third week of December-ish to potentially the end of February, beginning of March. Each of those cities will have 10 to 15 sleeper cells. Each of those sleeper cells will have 4 to 12 jihadis. Works out to somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 if you run the math on it. They will start by attacking soft targets first and foremost. They will wait for the first responders to show up, and they'll let off VBIEDs, so vehicle-borne IEDs, amongst other things, in the secondary and tertiary attacks, because their goal is going to be to kill as many first responders as they can. They will end up converging on the tier 1 trauma center in each of those tier 2 cities. They will siege those buildings. Those sieges will last for an extended period of time. FBI has 4 HRT teams, hostage rescue teams. They are not trained to unsiege buildings with 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 people in them. SWAT teams are not trained for it either. The only people who can feasibly do this is Delta Team, where Delta Team goes in and hunts down the jihadis and kills them. And at the same time, you've got the Rangers around the perimeter, handling whatever comes out of those buildings. Now, keep in mind, the jihadis are going to booby trap the shit out of these hospitals. They're going to be wearing invisible, suicide vests, visible ones as well at that point, but invisible for a very specific reason. If they can draw in law enforcement close to them and set it off and take law enforcement with them, that's what they want to accomplish. You're going to see videos come out of these hospitals of maiming, torturing, and killing Americans. Some of the sieges potentially could last many, many days. This is not going to be fixed quickly. Why the hospitals? Psychological, on top of which people who are grievously injured in those tier 2 cities and no tier 1 trauma center left. Now you got to triage who is able to survive to get them far away to wherever the next tier 1 trauma center is. And again, tier 2 cities are not surrounded by large centers where you can engage in what's called mutual aid, where you can ask for aid from surrounding areas and have substantial numbers of people showing up. There was a video we showed last week. I can't remember the specifics. It was over, I can't recall if it was a fake bomb threat or a real bomb threat. It doesn't matter. And the news where they were covering it from, both sides of this street were lined up with cop cars as far as you can see. And that's precisely what these guys are counting on, that they'll all pile up in one location, and then it's like shooting fish in a barrel, although with bombs instead. So with that out of the way, tonight's topic is weapons of mass disruption. So biological and chemical and engineered pathogens, having the ability to, have catastrophic consequences for us here and abroad. So imagine while these attacks are happening, or in the follow-on attacks, which will continue ad nauseum thereafter, you're going to have a whole bunch of people that are going to be caught in things like, if you take sarin nerve gas, for example, and you put it in a canister, and we know that this is part of their repertoire, and you put it inside of HVAC ductwork and you have it timed to go off in 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever the case may be, then you surround the perimeter of that building. So anybody who tries to get out of the building gets shot on the spot. 3 minutes, everybody's dead. And it doesn't even matter if you have guys there who have gas masks. It goes subcutaneous. If you have any bare skin, goes through your skin. The way nerve gases like that work is your brain saying, move your right hand, your left foot's moving. At the 3 minute mark or before that, your brain is sending signals to your heart to pump blood, your lungs to breathe. And that signal is getting sent somewhere else in your CNS, your central nervous system. And it's a horrible way to go. And like I said, it's in their toolbox. So basically, Washington playing politics and leaving our border wide open for 4 years, like Randy said earlier, it was on purpose. It wasn't incompetence, wasn't a mistake. It was by design. And the reason it was by design is because we are the firewall between globalism and freedom. And nobody else is stopping the globalists, can stop the globalists but us. You take America out of the picture, it's all downhill for all of humanity. So the emerging biochem threat landscape, 3 quick points here. So number one, this is a whole new ball game for us that will be involved in these 10 to 15 cities hitting it during 9/11 2.0. It's sneakier and deadlier than planes crashing into towers. I mean, you've got invisible killers essentially. I will mention that things like sarin nerve gas outside, they have very little efficacy because they diffuse so quickly. But inside, inside buildings, completely different story. I think, Randy, I think your mic's still on. You'll have, pardon me, we already have the terrorist groups have been cooking up all kinds of different toxins that go beyond things like nerve gas, and it's cheap stuff. There's cheap recipes to do this. A lot of the stuff is just off the shelf. I mean, for all intents and purposes, sarin nerve gas is bug spray, and for all intents and purposes. But, turning fertilizers into fuel, just like Timothy McVeigh. Imagine when they siege these tier 1 hospitals. Clede does have some intel that basically says they pull up to the front in what appears to be an ambulance or is a stolen ambulance, and they let off a VBIED and cave in the front of the building, just like Timothy McVeigh did. Maybe not quite that extensive, but enough that they then siege it from all points around it. I can tell you right now that there's a hospital that I'm not going to mention in Florida that has 160 entrance points, and at any point in time has 2 or 3 security guards on staff. At any point in time, there's approximately 5,000 people in the building. All 5 security guards that are on the payroll are over 300 pounds. They're as wide as they are tall. One of them carries a service revolver. The other 4 carry nothing but less lethal stuff. When you have jihadis coming in with machine guns and explosives, there's no match for that. So at the end of the day, this is not a movie plot. This is real life. And like Khalid just said, things are going to get real fast, really fast, I should say. And it's going to be absolute chaos. It's going to make 9/11 1.0 look like a practice run. And the fact of the matter is our mission at Survival Dispatch is to dispatch information to our fellow Americans and friends of America so that you stand the best chance of surviving in this very dangerous world that we're now in. And I'll say it one time before I go to Jeff and Randy. If you retain nothing else other than this, if you happen to be on the X or near the X and you survive any of these attacks, get as far away as fast as you possibly can. Do not let that normalcy bias kick in and go, phew, thank God I survived, because the first wave of what you think are cops will not be cops. They're the jihadis dressed up as cops. Ton of police, paramedic, and National Guard uniforms stolen over the past couple of years. Don't trust anybody. Get as far away as fast as you possibly can. So with all of that being said, let me get the boys back on stage here. And there we go. All right. So
can you hear me right now? I guess so.
Yeah, we've got you.
It's on mute. It's off. Now it's on.
No,
that's supposed to be off.
No, we got you loud and clear.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, I don't know. It was on mute.
Father Duck, please send Geek Squad to see Randy. Thank you.
Yes.
I'm just kidding. So, Jeff, with all of that was said by Khalid and the stuff that I just opened us up with, what are signs that people should watch for that might hint at a biological or chemical threat, in relative close proximity to them? Are there anything that can light people up here?
So biological don't really impact you that quickly. They have to infect you unless it's a toxin, like ricin or something like that. Even then it can take time. It can take even days. And I always used to joke, all biological weapons start with flu-like symptoms. So, damn near everything. Yeah. You feel achy, you got a cough, you got a runny nose, it's like you have the flu. Anthrax starts that way. Smallpox can start that way. You know, tularemia starts that way. They all do. Because it takes time for them to get into your system and then propagate enough to damage your system. And then your body reacts by producing antibodies and T cells and all that kind of thing.
Quick question, Jeff. So my understanding is that if you're exposed to anthrax, which is biological, as soon as you display the first symptoms of being hit with anthrax, you can't be saved beyond that point. Is that the case with all of these?
It's going to be tough because by the time the symptoms show up with anthrax in particular, it means it's already growing and spreading throughout your body and replicating to a point. And the problem with anthrax, and there's others that are similar, but anthrax is the famous one. The joke is, you kill it, but it kills you back, because when you kill the bacterium, it releases an endotoxin, and it's that endotoxin that kills you. You need to treat it before it builds up to that level in your bloodstream. Staphylococcus, is another one that's like a staph infections. That's what makes them so bad, is because when you kill the bacterium, it releases staph enterotoxin A, which is the one that can kill you. And that's just the way these things work in nature. That's a lot of times that's how they kill you. Now, Ebola, what it does is it ends up with little tiny blood clots throughout your body, and they actually see them with the naked eye because the clotting factor attacks the virus, and you get these little black specks, which is your own clotting factor. Well, they're small, but what they do is they clog up your capillaries. And so the tissue on the other side of the capillary is not getting any blood, and so it dies. And so that's why you get sloughing of the mouth, the linings of the mouth, the intestines, things like that, because that outer layer of tissue is dead.
Well, I appreciate that super thorough explanation. Want to quickly thank Manly Thomas for the tip. We really do appreciate it, guys. Thank you very much. One more question for you, Jeff, before I go to Randy. How do these, I know they're not new in the grand scheme of things, but new as far as terrorist attacks against us is concerned, how do they stack up against old school methodology like bombs as far as their ability to, have massive impact? And I mean, what happens to the public when they're told, oh, by the way, that was a chemical attack that killed those people. Oh, by the way, that was a biological attack. Seems to me that that's going to literally scare the bejesus out of everybody.
Yeah, it's going to freak people out because it's an invisible killer. Okay, a bomb goes off, you can relate to that. And when someone's injured by a bomb, there's blood or something, unless it's a concussion kind of thing. But for the most part, it's obvious. And then once the bomb goes off, the actual bomb attack itself is over. Now you got to deal with the injuries and treating people that are going to die. But the problem with chemical is you get it on you, you may not even know you get it on you. And then, it's on your clothes, and then you rub it, it gets in your skin, and and it can kill you, especially nerve agents can kill you quickly. Blister agents, you get it on, it starts to burn, then you get these nasty blisters, gets in your lungs, it burns the interior of your lungs and down your throat. But it's the idea that you can't frickin' see it. And persistent agents will stay in an area, they set it off and kills a bunch of people, and then they go back in a week later, it can still kill you because it's designed to be persistent. And maybe it's oily and it sticks on things. You're cleaning up the area and you touch something that the cleanup guys missed, and then you've got it again. Randy can probably explain that, because he's done that. I'm sure they've trained him on that in the military. Decontamination has to be thorough, because you miss one little bit, it can come back to haunt you.
Oh, it's just crazy stuff. Randy, in your opinion, what's the bigger threat, biological or chemical, or do you think that they're relatively similar in nature?
Well, I don't want either, pal. Because Jeff's right, and they start off like flu, but it's very quick. Once it starts happening, it's a fast process, and none of them are good, easy deaths. They're just not. It's a very, I was trying to think. There's probably multiple shows, but I don't know if people saw that series that was out some years back. Well, it's a while now. The Homeland. I think we talked about it before, where I think it was 2012, right, or somewhere in that neighborhood. But basically, kind of what we're talking about now, the Homeland plot, and it was about intelligence. And the guy named Peter Quinn was, they put him in the chamber with sarin gas. And if you watched, that is what they showed on TV was a very, very light. It was kind of nasty looking, but trust me, it's a lot worse than that in real life. And it's a miserable existence, and we used to have what are they, the atropine auto pens?
Yeah.
Atropine
auto injectors.
That's right.
In your thigh.
And basically told us as privates, if you get any on you, you're fucked. Because as Jeff was saying, you have to go into like decontamination. They gave us some stuff, but really there wasn't that much of it. And then you need to go through a further process. You would really want to be at a facility that had all the proper facility, all the stuff that you really need to do that, to shower and all that kind of stuff, because it's a pretty serious deal. And that's why you put on your mop gear. When you go mop level 4 in the military, that's with the boots, the suit, the gloves, the mask, everything. And, I think the EIB standard in the infantry for putting that mask on is 11 seconds or less, or 9 seconds and less. It's been a long time since I've had to do it. But when one kicks off, that's about how much time. And of course, your mask was the very first thing you put on. And that's why, because they give you, it was either 9 or 11 seconds to get that thing on and operating so that you didn't breathe it in. And then you put your suit on, the gloves, the boots and everything else. So it's neither one would be good. You know what I mean? I don't know. I haven't seen anybody die in all of them ways to weigh that part out, but I can tell you none of them are good. And none of it, it would be horrible to actually have to watch one of your loved ones or a friend die that way. And you certainly wouldn't want to have to die that way yourself.
Yeah, and just to add to that you and I and everybody else who has a beard,
done.
You have to shave your beard off before you put the mask on, and you put
it's too late for me. If I didn't shave it before, it's too late according to the standard of getting it on.
Right.
Because these things travel, as you know, very quickly through the air. It's not something,
And you can't get a SEAL with a beard
at all.
Right.
Yep.
So before we move into segment 2, is there anything in your training as a Green Beret that you can share? And if not, that's fine. We'll just move on.
What do you mean as far as chemical and
as far as facing all this stuff in the field, like when you guys were running missions?
Well, for SF, we still had to carry that gear too. You try to avoid it. And during my time, the biggest threat was during the initial invasion, and I was a private in the infantry. So by the time I got to 5th group, that wasn't even discussed anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate that. I just put a link in the chat on all the platforms we're sending to this national blueprint for biodefense. I've got a couple more that I'm going to share as well. We've shared this one before, the Homeland Threat Assessment, and another one here, Annual Threat Assessment from the U.S. Intelligence Community. I'll share those two in just a minute, but we're fixing to jump into segment number 2. And I know, Sissy, I see you. I have my little love.
To Kim Conklin, that's exactly why they're going to be hiding in their bunkers. Not only they're going to be hiding because of the chemical and the biological stuff, but you got to realize when things kick off, people are going to know who's really at fault. And if they're down in their bunker, the mob can't get to them. So that's the 2 top reasons.
I have a sweet little female rescue pit bull beside me that wants attention. So anyway, moving on into segment 2, the evolution from conventional to asymmetric warfare. So, call it back in the day, wars meant, tanks rolling in, bombs dropping from the sky. But the bad guys are smart now, way smarter than they were in the past. And they flipped the script to asymmetric hits, where a single, vial of a lab tweaked virus or chemical could potentially cripple, a superpower without firing a single shot. And why do I say cripple? Well, if we have these attacks happening, not like 9/11 2.0, where you've got all hell breaking loose everywhere, but you have a follow-on attack that is in one area, and it's something so devious that there's just no viable way to protect against it, that will result in things like the Patriot Act 2.0. So that's what I mean by, basically crippling a superpower. So it's not very expensive. None of these things are expensive for the bad guys. It's not like building aircraft carriers and jets and all that kind of stuff. It's cheap. So now we're not just dodging bullets during 9/11 2.0 and kinetic terrorist attacks, but you could be outrunning plagues, that are cooked up in shipping containers. You could have groups like ISIS and lone wolves, which those two kind of go together, like the guy in New Orleans, January 1st this year. You've got off the shelf, technology where they can put this stuff together in rudimentary labs. And it basically, they're laughing at our complete lack of defenses against any of this stuff. Global travel, for example, we've talked about this at length. What happens if they sneak some of this shit on a plane and they release it and everybody on the plane dies, including the crew, and the plane crashes in a heavily populated area? And when we do the investigation, find out what happened, the same thing that we've already mentioned with Al-Qaeda and 9/11 2.0, the whole airline industry globally is shut down at that point in time. So there's more crippling happening there. Anyway, this is a really hard shift, for lack of a better term, going from old school kinetic war to asymmetric warfare. And now it's not about winning this battle or that battle. I mean, asymmetric by definition, also referred to as fifth generation warfare. One of the criteria or aspects is, where the hell's the front line? Nobody knows where the front line is because you're getting hit in all of these, very devious manners. And so now it's no longer about, okay, we're going to drop a bomb on you and therefore we win the war. It's going to be breaking people's will through sheer panic, gridlock. I mean, just imagine how bad this could get. They can drop them from the air. They can release this stuff on the ground. They could walk into an emergency room and release this stuff. And not only would they nuke all the people in there, now the rest of the people who are sick and injured have nowhere to go that's in relative close proximity, as I explained earlier. So I'm coming back to you first here, Jeff. Let me get you up on stage. And I want to get your thoughts, your context on this, of the jump from bombs to bugs and chemicals as far as the way terrorists are picking their fights. I mean, they would drive into the Marine barracks or stuff like that. Now this is really sneaky shit.
Well, yeah, it's just an advancement in tactics. Chemical weapons were an advancement in tactics from artillery in World War I. That's where it came from. And it's just a tool in the tool belt, so to speak. For them, I mean, they just look at it as another way to kill the infidel. And can be potentially a more efficient way, but it depends on your delivery system. And the thing about a chemical or biological weapon, if you attack an area and if people are not in that area, you've kind of wasted your stuff. Because, even with anthrax, you don't need very many particles, but you still have to inhale a certain amount to actually get it. Every particle that falls on something that isn't a person is essentially wasted, and most of it's going to go onto the ground or onto the trees and that kind of stuff. Chemical persistent agents, they can get there, kind of an area denial weapon. You would hit an area and it wasn't so much to kill the enemy, but for them to know, okay, I can't go through that anymore. It's almost like a chemical minefield. And so you'd have to decontaminate a large area just to be able to use that territory again. And you think about a military base, you could hit a base and render it useless until you could completely, decontaminate it. But it's just another weapon. But what it does, I think, again, it's the specter of chemical weapons, biological weapons. Those sound really, really scary, sort of like nuclear weapon. And they look at them as, that's the triad of the most dangerous weapons on earth. Not necessarily, but it really sounds bad and you get a lot more panic.
Scale of 1 to 10, how prepared is our military for chemical and biological? Call them WMDs. Then scale of 1 to 10, how prepared are law enforcement agencies prepared?
Military, I can't say. Randy could answer that question for you. I wasn't in the military. But law enforcement, no, they're not. And it's not something that you encounter. It's not something that you're going to train for. Their job is to keep the peace, make arrests, investigate crimes. Dealing with chemical and biological weapons is really not their job. It may rapidly become their job. It'd become everybody's job, but that's not part of their mission statement. Catch bad guys, protect property and protect against chemical weapons. No, it's not in anyone's wheelhouse.
Yeah, makes sense. So, Randy, if history is any indicator, and let's just step outside of the 9/11 2.0 bubble for a minute, how long do you think it is before we see a large-scale chemical or biological weapon used that, is something on a national level or potentially even a global level? Is this far off?
Well, let's take Ted Kaczynski for an example, right?
Okay.
Thank God he was a mathematician and not a biologist, or we would have already seen that. So he just sent bombs, right? But he was a nut job, right? On the fringes of society. He was disenfranchised. He was a loner, a hermit, basically. Think about over the Biden years and over certainly since all this craziness has been going on, really since 2016, but really took off a big slide from 2019 on. How many of these people we've probably cooked up ourselves in this own country in the young youth? And sooner or later, one of them is going to be a biologist. And that's just if none of our enemies take advantage of that. And I would say now that we know that the jihadis are playing with that as as now a viable attack weapon, I would say that we're going to see it sooner than later, because as I mentioned, nobody wants to see either one of those because it is not good, and to Jeff's point, I think the military might be the only ones that would be somewhat prepared, but I guarantee you inadequate right now, woefully inadequate. But it's, the military twice a year, even in the infantry, you have to go through the gas chamber, right? And basically the whole purpose of that is to make sure that mask works and you know how to don it, right? And you go in and they got this shit burning out good too in the tent, right? And so you go in there with it on, and then they have you take it off, and then they have you breathe in a few times, and then they ask you several questions, right? Before then you re-put it back on, so you can see the difference of when you break that seal. And when you come walking out of that tent, there are pictures on every installation and videos from all those units of people that have snot running from their mouth and nose all the way to the ground coming out of that thing. So you do that twice a year to check that mask. So every soldier has a mask assigned to them. So they would be better prepared for that. And they've actually twice a year have to qualify for that to make sure their mask works. And they have a chemical, like I mentioned, the task force, we had some chemical guys that were attached to us. The military, has chemical guys for that reason, because we expected that to happen in military, just like, back in World War II, World War I, they were using mustard gas. We don't know what all they used in World War II. Who really knows? But, we did end up at the end of the day dropping nukes also. So it's expected for the military. And I would say they would be the only ones prepared to a certain degree. But, they would have to go back to that shaving standard for sure, as we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I want to get you to speak a little bit more on this from another angle before we go into the next segment. So we did a challenge. Denny Chapman and I did a challenge where it was well over 100 degrees here in Florida, and we were doing some run and gun training, and we had 5 circuits planned, and the goal was to wear a gas mask. And so you're running, you're exercising, you're shooting. People will hear me mention this frequently when it comes to masks. So the Mira C28, the CM8, they've got indentations below the viewport, or they're so low profile you can get a regular cheek weld on a rifle, whereas some of the other cheaper masks don't do that. So Randy, I made it the first time. I made it through 4 circuits, and I thought I was going to frickin' die. And so I had to take the mask off, and Denny won that round. The next round that I did, I went from wearing I'm not going to name the vendor because I'm not into hurting businesses, but I put the Mira on, and I got through the 5 of them. but my stress level was, and keep in mind, those 5 circuits all combined works out to 45 minutes of running and gunning in 100+ degree Florida weather. Talk about the stress that occurs when you're under attack as a soldier, and now you're all enclosed in a mask on top of that. It's horrible. You can explain it though even better than I can. You're on mute.
Well, I have done it in training. I never, thank God, when I had to wear, we wore the J list, which was the new, I don't know what they have today, but typically they'd had Nomex, and it was this big, thick stuff that had charcoal on the inside, and it was heavy. During the summertime, it was absolutely brutal. As you know, it's a brutal existence when you have on that mop gear and the mask. Anybody that's ever trained with those little altimeter masks, now just times that by 100, because now you have this suit on with it. And oh, by the way, you're going full bore. And even in training, having to run and gun, doing that thing, again, is like you said, is the most miserable existence there is. Then you got to keep your lenses from fogging up or building up condensation, because now you're sweating like a pig. For me, it was in the middle of Savannah, Georgia, or Hinesville in the swamps in Georgia there in the middle of summertime was something I'll never forget. And yeah, it's as far as shooting, and back then, the mask I had didn't do a great cheek weld either. And what we all pretty much determined it was going to be, if you ever actually got in a real gunfight having to wear this stuff, it was going to be more of a point and shoot type of thing. Hopefully it's close up, because you're not going to take long range shots with some of these masks on. Now, maybe they have some today that are better suited for this type of thing, but it is definitely a hindrance for the shooting platform. That's just the way it is. And there's no way around it, because if you actually need that mask, it's the only reason you're still alive.
Right. So a quick question here for you, Randy. When you were going through your training, did you happen to do any training with single point slings where your firearm, your rifle is tight to your chest like the European cops do? Like you see them with MP5s, single point sling, and it's basically wherever their body goes, that's where the fire goes. But on a less sophisticated front, I went through some training where you basically held your pistol, to just below your solar plexus. It's hard to see at this camera angle. Let me see if I can, maybe this one will show it a little bit better. Yeah, kind of like this. And you've got to shoot these targets. I was surprised how accurate this was, by the way, as far as hitting targets from this type of formation. What kind of training can you tell me about that you all went through as far as point and shoot, like you mentioned?
Well, so your sidearm or the pistol work, that position you had right there is where you start every single time, and that is why. And you don't just pull like you see in movies, all of a sudden like this. No, it is turn and the gun starts from here, because when you get to here, and of course you get to shoot as much where you get this down. So when you push out and go straight, when you're fully trained and you have, you've incorporated this, the moment your elbows lock out, you're already on target and squeezing the trigger. Cool. There is no get there and then aim, right? And that all starts with that position right there that you started with, because as you said, even if you were just had to shoot somebody real quick right here, that's very easy. And there's no doubt you're aiming it right at them. Certainly, again, close proximity, but it works for the same thing. And that is the very first step in pistol work, is right there. And then you lock out, boom, that quick. And again, it's a controlled pair at that point. You never shoot just once.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thanks, Randy. Appreciate that. So we're going to jump into segment 3 here. Want to give a quick shout out to a couple of our sponsors. The flat jerky, I ate it all. I have to go to the kitchen and get more. But wasatchwagyu.com. This is the best jerky I've ever had in my life. If you were with us last night, you noticed me making a pig out of myself and eating up all the pickle stuff. They got some crazy friggin' things that don't taste anything like what you would think. So this is a kiss of coffee. Greg was telling me, the guy who owns this, he was saying, you know what? You cook a steak and then you sprinkle a little bit of coffee powder on it. Don't tell anybody about it. They'll go crazy over the flavor of it. I'll put a link in the live chat in just a second. So wasatchwagyu.com. And the code, is SD15, Survival Dispatch 15. So SD15, you get 15% off. We do not get affiliate money from it. But just like our premier sponsor, Carnivalt, we get stipends to help us, look after our expenses. We have some pretty big expenses. We're $4,700 a month on software subscriptions. We're $4,000 a month on ClearStar background checks to admit people into our Guardian community that I mentioned. And I'll speak a little bit more on both Carnivalt and Wasatch Wagyu at the end of the video. Sorry, the end of the broadcast, I should say. So we're in this segment number 3, gaps in U.S. preparedness and border security. So our border was wide open like a sieve for 4 years under Biden. And, we all know what happened. We all know that we were flooded with all kinds of people from third world countries, many who were looking for a better life, but they still came here, illegally. And many of them who waltzed in here knowing that they were going to be part of 9/11 2.0, or they were going to be on call. And that includes the 30,000 CCP that Randy spoke to that are now reportedly positioned close to important parts of our infrastructure. And, it's absolutely disgusting what the last administration did. It was definitely on purpose, was not by fault. Again, we are the firewall between globalism and freedom. So we talked last night at length of, as far as our infrastructure is concerned, we've got power grids, water plants, subways, train lines. All of these are soft targets. Now imagine, instead of using bombs like we discussed last night, that they go into these, different types of locations, infrastructures, as far as where there's humans running the show, and they start letting out all these chemical agents, biological agents. And, it's not like there's detectors that say, oh, it's, like carbon monoxide and sort of thing. It's like, oh, there's anthrax in the air. Maybe we should do something. I mean, this stuff is really, really, really scary. So at the end of the day, thank God Joe Kent, was given the opportunity to speak today, because up until today, this is all I've seen from this administration. And I voted for Trump 3 times, been to Mar-a-Lago a couple times. It's been all over overseas stuff and not enough focus on what the hell's going on here, knowing full well that we have a shit ton of jihadis in our country with nefarious purposes, knowing that we have hard intel on 9/11 2.0, thanks to Khalid and his guys in particular. And, we are just flat out not ready for this. Our hospitals aren't ready to treat people from this. I mean, it's just brutal stuff. So coming to you first, Jeff, let me get you up on the right stage here. How feasible was it when the border was wide open for not only these people to walk across the border, but bring in these types of weapons, whether they be chemical or biological, versus how many of them do you think came into the country and then made them in rudimentary labs, or are making them potentially in rudimentary labs?
Well, it's very easy, first of all, for them to get in and to bring it in. I mean, people, all you gotta do is wait for a large group to come across to the right, wait for them to engage the border patrol with that, and then you just walk across further to the left, carrying whatever you want.
Hold up here. Give me an idea on the size of container or volume that would be necessary to have do an effective attack, for example, on a building like a hospital or school.
With what?
Like, give me the size of, like, if they came across with a cup full of anthrax, versus.
Yeah, I mean, if you went into a building and you dump that in the HVAC system before it gets blown all over the building, you wouldn't need that much. Because the particles are extremely small if you do it right. I mean, by right, I mean scientifically right. You get the right particle size for inhalation and implantation, blah blah blah. They're tiny. You don't need a lot. And so, plus it would render the whole building contaminated. And, even if you didn't kill that many people initially, it would be rendered useless for God knows how long.
Could it be as small as, say, a thermos?
Yeah, sure.
So pretty easy to get into buildings then.
Yeah. Chemical, depending on the type of area you want to hit, and it might be a little bit more, but biological agents are probably the most bang for the buck volume wise.
Okay. good piece of information. That's what I was looking for. You've spoken on water plants, municipal water plants in the past. I see a lot of stuff in, various documents referencing the fact that our water, municipal water supplies aren't very well protected. I know that diffusion is a big part of it, but just speak in terms of, is it a viable attack vector? Is it a soft point that can be exploited to cause mass death or illness, or is diffusion still just too significant?
Well, yeah, we always used to say dilution is the solution. For water plants, it's not really a very effective way of doing it. First of all, the water is treated with, it's chlorinated, so that's going to kill off. If it's a biological agent, that's going to kill a lot of it off. A lot of biological agents, the most effective way to distribute it is through inhalation. Well, if it's in a water treatment plant, it's not. You may eat. Now, anthrax, you can get anthrax by ingestion. You can get cutaneous scratch on your skin, but militarily, the way it always looked at inhalation, because you can spread it and you inhale it and you move on. It's not really, a water plant is really not that effective. And you think about the amount of water that goes through it, how much of it is actually ingested by people, minuscule amount. You even think about your own house. I don't know how much water you drink a day, but if you flush your toilet, you've probably just used more water than you would ever drink. Take a shower, even more. So most of the water is used for washing, and if cooking even, okay, but you cook, you're boiling water, that's probably going to kill most of your biological agents right there too.
So as far as attacks on water plants are concerned, would you say that attacks that essentially shut down their ability to treat and distribute water would be the most effective, attack against them?
Yeah, I think it'd be more disruptive. And yeah, you could damage the purification systems, and you could make a lot of people sick through, freaking Giardia or Listeria, any common thing. Gets into the water system and people get it, but you're not going to kill that many. And once it gets out, you give everybody antibiotics or whatever treatment it is, and you'll probably be okay. And if you have a Sawyer Mini, you'll filter all that crap out anyway. But it's just not an efficient delivery system. If you're looking, you can have mass casualties, but it's probably not going to cause a lot of death. I mean, you can make people sick by putting, some Listeria or something into the water, or Giardia.
Yeah, makes sense. So Randy, I asked you a similar type of question the past couple of nights, but now we have a little bit of a different context with Joe Kent speaking on the Hill today. If money was not a concern, is there any one fix that you can think of that you could throw money at to protect us against this chemical and biological threat? You're on mute.
Yeah, I don't, at this point, I don't know if it's that really, if we're up on the cusp of this thing about to happen. I don't think that there really is. Again, I think the biggest, what would have the biggest impact is if they just went around and rounded all these folks up, in every state basically over the next 2 weeks, like very aggressively. That's where I would focus at this point. You're not gonna, most likely they've already got the product here. You know what I mean? I would say, certainly since we talked about all the chatter seems to have gone quiet. So, yeah, I would assume they've already got it here. And then preventing that as it happens, boy, it's going to be it'd be a tough pill to, that'd be a tough pill or in order to reach, because, I mean, how are you going to know they're about to deploy it and where they would deploy it? I do know the military does. Now, that's once it's released, though, because I mentioned we had chemical guys with us. They thought that's why we were J-list for 21 days. And again, everybody says that, Saddam didn't have any weapons of mass destruction. He definitely had blister agents and some other biological stuff. And we know this for a fact because we gave it to him. And that's why we were in those suits, because we expected there would be some sort of a chemical attack, because that would be one of the ways that he could definitely slow up the invasion and attack effectively, right? So we had that on, but I never had to use it, thank goodness, and they didn't use it. But we had a vehicle. I think it was called the Fox. I think that was the name of it. It was not a tank. It was kind of it was one of the newer vehicles they got that had wheels, the Strikers, right? It kind of had the shape of a Striker, but before a Striker. But then this thing was just a chemical, and supposedly within 5 miles, any kind of chemical or biological, including nuclear release, this vehicle would pick it up and would notify us. Now, fortunately, we never got to see that thing work. But we do, and I would assume the military and the government has those types of things. But again, it's after it's released. So
quick question before we go to the fourth segment. When Jeff was talking about using water to potentially make people sick, but not enough to kill them, from a military perspective in your, mind, wouldn't that be a great precursor to attacking a city? Basically contaminate their water, make everybody or the majority of people sick as a dog, and then hit them with an attack?
Maybe it's the right time of day, but I will remind you of Morell's Marauders in World War II in Japan. And as Americans, we will still, pardon my French, kick some fucking ass, even when these men had to cut holes in their pants. That's how bad the diarrhea was.
Wow.
But they never stopped them, and they're famous for it. They're Morell Marauders. Look them up. It's a fact.
Boy, that's awesome, Randy. Thank you for sharing that. All right, so now we're going to move into segment number 4, catastrophic impacts on American cities. So picture this, silent germ wave rolls through rush hour in a city, and all of a sudden people start dropping like flies in offices, subways, ERs, essentially turn into a war zone overnight as the sick pile up faster than they can be treated and faster than we can even bag the bodies up, grinding those cities to a complete halt. Chemical hits, as Jeff pointed out, would be, quicker and uglier, with clouds of poison gas turning, areas into ghost towns, basically, and, highways into parking lots full of people puking their guts out. And, we know how people behave on Black Friday. Imagine, when people are that sick and seeking help. I can see, the wheels essentially coming off. And the long-term fear generated by that, because we're back to what Jeff said. You can't see it. You can't detect that it's coming unless you have, the type of tool that Randy just mentioned. And I think that you would see a whole bunch of people who would bug in, basically. They would stay home. Now, we know a number of people can work remotely these days, but you're talking quarantines that go way beyond what Charlie 19 was. And we know what the scars are from Charlie 19. Now imagine if the threat was real, unlike Charlie 19, which was a fabricated pile of bullshit just to see how much they could get away with us. But it could be absolutely catastrophic to us. So, Jeff, coming to you first, talk to me about what would it look like if you had multiple cities hit with biological or chemical weapons, and what the short-term effects are as far as traffic is concerned?
Well, traffic's going to be a nightmare no matter what kind of attack you have. The problem with chemical and biological attacks is you're driving your car, you can't see it. If a bomb goes off, there's debris, there's smoke, there's a thing. You say, okay, I need to stay away from that area. Whereas with a chemical or biological attack, you have no clue. You may drive right into it or right through a cloud. Who knows? I think that the indicator would be if traffic, there's just a bunch of cars parked on the side of the road for no apparent reason. It may be because they went into a chemical cloud and they all had, got exposed and croaked right there.
So I just want you to speculate on this. How do you think hospital overload, how bad do you think the overload could get? And where's the tipping point when things go from bad to biblical?
Chemical, it could go quickly because they're going to take all these people to the hospital. If they're exposed to, say, a nerve agent, especially if it's even a semi-persistent one, that means all the people in the hospital would have to be suited up just to treat them. And they're probably not prepared for that either. So you would have a cascading effect where the emergency room people would then be exposed to a chemical agent just by treating the wounded. One thing with the chemical agent, especially a nerve agent, if it's going to kill you, it probably does it quick. So you may not even make it to a hospital. The people who got a lesser dose and are impacted, but maybe not a lethal dose, those are the ones that are going to go to the hospital. Biological, the problem with that is you probably won't even know for 2 or 3 days. And then you're going to see the hospitals starting to fill up with sick people. But a lot of those people will, again, flu-like symptoms, they'll think they've just got the flu. And then by the time they realize it's not, they're full blown sick, and then they're going to require a lot more treatment. If they get in quickly, anthrax, every antibiotic out there just about kills anthrax. You can give somebody tetracycline, penicillin, doxycycline, any of that stuff.
But before the symptoms are visible, right?
Yeah, I mean, after you've been exposed, but before the symptoms get heavy.
Okay. All right.
If you've determined there has been a biological release, you just take anybody in the exposed area and put them on antibiotics.
Right on. I'm going to be working with Dr. Mike this weekend on more shortwave HF stuff. I'm going to ask him about protocols. I think you're probably right. I doubt that all 1,000 staff in a hospital are ready for this and have suits, so on and so forth. So, Randy, I mean, you saw a lot of shit go down in the Middle East. When bad things like this happen in a larger city, in a tier 2 city, still pretty decent size, 100 to 500K, what's the ripple effect on the smaller cities that are in relatively close proximity to those big cities?
Well, they're dependent on them, for someone, certainly for fuel, and water. There'll be certain things that they're definitely dependent on those, as everything works hand in hand. No matter how far out you are, you have to, be able to shop at some point for food and other things. And, somebody was asking about being low to the ground. Hey, gas or these chemicals, all these things are usually heavier than air, and they're on the ground. Like back in, World War II or World War I, sorry, the mustard gas, they learned to have to look before they went into the big bomb pits, the holes in the ground before they went into it, because if there was a cloud, I think they could see mustard gas. But the reality is most of these you can't. And so, and then it's about dissipation and how long is it going to take, how much was released, how long does it take to dissipate, how are they going to clean it up? So it could affect your outer, now, some of the good thing about those outer rural areas are a little bit self-reliant already to begin with, right? They will come up with ways to figure out how to get around it. But sure, they're not going to be able to go into town and shop anymore. You know what I mean? Or even if it's once a month to go get groceries or whatever it is. And then you think of the cities are a lot of times where these stuff is being made now that people are buying, regardless if it's food or have you, or even dog food. Generally that comes from some, manufacturer in a city somewhere. So the trickle down effect could be, it could be a lot, but again, the people in the rural area, a country boy can survive type thing. I think those people will figure it out. It's just going to be a lot harder and a lot less.
Appreciate that, Randy. So let me get back to the right stage here because I want to show something. Let me get the boys back up on here. Apologies. So somebody in the chat was asking what my thoughts were on, when I say globalism and freedom, who's to blame? Go find this 1994 lecture by Dr. John Coleman called The Committee of 300. So if you search, I use Yandex most of the time because I don't trust Google, but do a search on John Coleman, The Committee of 300. As you can see, it's an hour and 43 minutes long. It's a really long video, but that will reveal who the money kings are, what the money kings do, and how they've controlled the entire world, at least since the time of the Rockefellers and, JP Morgan, et cetera, et cetera. But that video used to get taken down all the time, especially during the Biden years. I noticed that it's staying up a few places now, or it's been restored. But John Coleman, the Committee of 300, it's pretty shocking stuff. So with that being said, we're going to go into the final segment here, segment number 5, actionable steps for personal and national defense. So basically, we repeat this stuff pretty frequently. I'll use this as an opportunity to say we are a survival and prepping company, Survival Dispatch. I own it. I'm the CEO, and that's what our wheelhouse encompasses. I have a spreadsheet with over 5,000 videos published by Survival Dispatch since its inception in 2016. And when I did a deep dive into it in the spring, 42% of the episodes that we did were centered on terrorism, sleeper cells, those sort of things. Then when I met Khalid last spring, I thought to myself, boy, we've got to grab this bull by the horns and try to get information out as best as we can. So I just want to say one thing quickly for the pundits. I'm not an intelligence expert. I've never positioned myself as an intelligence expert. I am, however, a conduit who has a ginormous Rolodex. I'm almost at 23,000 people that I've worked with during my career in my Rolodex. And I've got the ability to bring people together. I come from high tech, but I also come from the country. And if I'm not an expert at something, I'll be the first one to tell you that. But one thing I am an expert at is surrounding myself with really smart people and then getting out of the way and letting them do what they do. So with that being said, I just want to make sure you all understand the context here. I'm not an intelligent subject matter expert. I am an expert in certain things when it comes to survival and prepping. I wouldn't say all of them, but a good chunk of them. And where I have any shortfalls, again, we stand on the shoulders of giants by bringing those people to the table. So basically, how do you prep for this stuff? You'll hear us repeat a lot of this stuff. So number one, the average American works 18 miles from home. You have got to have a get home bag that realistically can get you home, whether it be the same day or 2 or 3 days to get home. And the fact of the matter is there's certain things that need to be in those. And you can go to our website, survivaldispatch.com, or you can go to our Substack, survivaldispatch.news. And I won't bore you with a whole bunch of stuff because we just had a conversation on this online a couple nights ago. But there are certain things you absolutely have to have in that bag. You have to have a way to defend yourself. So guns and ammo. You absolutely have to have water and a way to purify water. Jeff mentioned Sawyer. I'll tell you what, we did a deep dive into water products about 3.5 years ago, and it pissed me off so bad. I swore to God I wasn't going to touch water products again because they all failed. Big stainless steel water filters that sit on your counter from a name who shall remain unnamed got worse results than $30 Britas, and it really pissed me off and how much snake oil there was there. But finally, I got talked into doing a deep dive on Sawyer products, made in America, made the other side of the state here in Tampa, 0.1 micron filters, the only ones who are legit in that regard. They pass with absolute flying colors. We recommend 2 products and 2 products only, and that's Sawyer products and Grail, spelt Grayl. So you got to have water. You need to have some sustenance in there if it's going to take you more than a day to get home. And even if it doesn't take you more than that, you should have something like protein bars, something at your disposal. You should have a small battery backup, preferably one that has a solar panel on top. You get like a 50,000 milliamp hour, battery with a solar panel on it for $30, $40 on Amazon. That'll charge your smartphone God knows how many times, like way more than it would take you to get home. That's for sure. You need to have extra socks. We've talked about this at length. Go ahead, send me all the hate mail you want. If you think that having extra socks in your get home bag or go bag is stupid, yeah, whatever. I don't really care, because anybody will tell you, Randy's told us, everybody's told us, when your feet go, you're done. You're toast. There's nothing more important than keeping your feet underneath you when you're on the Ankle Express trying to get home, and having extra pairs of socks is key. Having comfortable shoes. If you wear business attire and you're going to walk home in penny loafers or high heels. Good luck with that. You got to have that as well. For shelter, I always recommend the USGI ponchos, the legit ones, real ones. Good luck finding them. They're like hen's teeth, but you can get knockoffs that are pretty darn close. Why a poncho? If you're walking, it keeps you dry. If you're not walking and you need to hunker down, it becomes a small shelter for you. And if it's cold out and you need to stay warm, a candle that you can light underneath the poncho while you're down, you would be surprised at just how much that will raise the temperature, probably enough to save you, unless you're in some super extreme, below zero temperatures. Another thing, and I'm going to give them a plug here, is that jerky is a great thing to have in your get home or go bags. Like I'm a jerky guy, but nobody compares to Wasatch Wagyu. And again, I'll put some more of this in the link, but Wasatch Wagyu discount code is SD15. They do not give us affiliate money. Just want to make that clear. If you have longer to go, Carnival, you can now get Carnival in single packets, reconstitutes 5 to 10 minutes. You got raw meat, you're ready to cook. So you need ways to start fires as well. And again, go to our website, survivaldispatch.com, go to our Substack, just search on things like get home bags, go bags, those sort of things. And, we've got all kinds of advice on all of that stuff. What we didn't cover the other night ago, though, were emergency kits in your vehicle. So I'm going to go back to Jeff and Randy on that one. And let me get them up on the other stage. So coming to you first, Randy, since you're on stage, let's go beyond a go bag or a get home bag. And let's talk about things that everybody should have in their vehicle at all times, and taking into account things like the poor young girl a couple years ago who got caught in a blizzard in Buffalo, and the snow piled up so much that it, blocked the exhaust and she died of carbon monoxide poisoning. Just give us what you would say is absolutely mandatory in a car emergency kit. And then Jeff, same answer or same question for you. And then we're going to start wrapping this up. You're on mute, Randy.
Let me see. Is that working now? No, it's still not. Okay.
Yeah, no.
I switched another setting to see there's a mute on the mic.
Okay.
Use that one, but apparently this one doesn't work. So, you covered a lot of stuff there. We obviously, I would have some water. You might even have a little bit of fuel. And I don't know that carrying it in your car or your trunk would be very safe. So I'm not sure how you would actually do that. But on objects that you can, in regards to the young woman, that if you live in an area that that there's a possibility it's going to snow that much, you might even if it's one of those little military shovels, because the reality is even that little shovel they issued to the guys in World War II, you could still dig a trench or a bunker or any of that stuff with that thing. You would definitely be able to dig out your exhaust a little bit if you were able to do that. But bar that, if it was just anywhere in the country, one of the things people don't talk about is, I would have some rope, because you never know what you might need rope for. It's always good to have.
Good advice.
I would have a tarp. I certainly would have a poncho like what you talked about. You know what I mean? And then I would go into any kind of little, of course, some flashlights. I'd probably even have some extra batteries. Again, that's something though. Batteries are also dependent on weather. So if you have it out in your car and it's in the summertime and it's 150 degrees in there, they're not going to last long. Same thing if it gets very cold. You're not going to last long in there. But driving around, if I was going to go on a trip, you might want to put some in there. I would definitely have let's see, what else would you might not think of? Because we already covered a weapon. It's already talked about, and you should probably have one of those in there. You might also have one of those little crank up shortwave radios, and like I said before, don't get the ones that the government hands out. Go buy you one. Because the ones we handed out in Iraq or in Baghdad, they were government issued and they were hand crank and they did work. But we were told that they made sure they were going to pick up the stations that we wanted them to pick up. So go buy you one that picks up everything. Don't take one that's handed out. But I would have a little crank up hand wave or a shortwave radio in there for communication. if you probably have some of that in your go kit, so we won't cover the rest of it. I guess I don't know. That's probably about it that I can think of right now without carrying on and mumbling around and stumbling for the
That's
next
all
10
good.
minutes. Yeah.
No, definitely good stuff. So before I go to Jeff, I'm glad that you mentioned radios. And I dropped this one the other night ago. This one here, of all the radios that I've tested, all the emergency radios. So the big comms video that's coming up, that's going to cover everything available, is going to cover these radios like Randy mentioned. And this is one of the ones that's got a cranker on it. And so basically you can, turn it like this to charge it up. The good ones, like this one from Midland, and they make an emergency kit for these things from Midland as well, by the way. But the good ones from Midland, they've got a kit that so like to prepare your family. So there's a couple different radios. There's this one, there's one that's smaller, and then there's another one that's really focused on weather. But this guy will pick up, some high frequency stuff like shortwave HF. It's AM, it's FM, it's NOAA, and a whole bunch of stuff. These are invaluable, like absolutely invaluable. I'll turn around this way so you can actually read it. But this Midland radio, of all the ones I've tested, is the bomb. It's got flashlights on it, hand cranker, everything. The other thing is, you probably heard me drop this last night. There's not a scratch on it. And I thought to myself afterwards, oh, I'm glad it still works. Imagine that. So Jeff, your input on get home, what people should have in their vehicle beyond just their get home and go bags.
Well, I think, Randy pretty much covered it. Being from Arizona, you want to make sure you've got water. And if you're in a cold area, you want to make sure there's a blanket. Shove it under the seat, put it behind the seat, put it in the trunk, something, because, you always need something to keep you warm, and you need to stay hydrated. So,
good advice. I'm going to add this to the mix, some CBRN stuff. So chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear. So basically gas masks, if you have them. I like the Mira stuff myself. I'm very partial to Mira. And the reason I'm very partial to Mira is because it's military grade stuff, essentially built in Serbia by a really awesome American who came here from Serbia. He loves our country. His name's Roman. And I tell you what, all the run and gun training I've done, nothing compares to those masks for me from a claustrophobia perspective, because the claustrophobia with that stuff on is crazy. But having some CBRN stuff in your car would be a good idea, so that if it is a chemical, biological, or God forbid, radiological or nuclear, not the same thing, radiological being, a nuclear power plant, good stuff to have on hand. So with that being said, I think that's the end of our chemicals on the mind, our main topic for tonight, that these coordinated attacks that we're looking at in 9/11 2.0, very high likelihood that there will be some sort of biological chemical components in some areas. Khalid has brought specific intelligence to the table, stating sarin being used in schools and HVAC, as well as booby trapping the trauma centers, the hospitals, with sarin, so that when the Delta teams do show up, that they've got this stuff all ready to go. And they will essentially kill everybody in the building, except for probably the Delta team guys who will come in, prepared for that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, I think this is one of the scariest parts of terrorist attacks that we're staring at. And after 9/11 2.0, oh my God, and all the follow-on attacks, holy crap, man. Manly Thomas, I don't know what to say. Thank you very much. We really, really appreciate your support. It's very, very kind of you. Thank you. So, man, that caught my eye. It was just like, I saw it show up on my other screen here. Super Jet. We have an amazing audience, and I appreciate all y'all very, very much. So at the end of the day, I'll just close on the main topic. Sorry, I got disrupted by that very, very generous donation. Do everything you possibly can to prepare for all aspects, not just kinetic aspects. So with that being said, favorite time of the night, 3, 2, 1. All right, it is time for the Carnivalt Hero of the Day. And I choose Nick Freitas. I've met Nick. I've had a couple of meetings with Nick. I'm going to tell you what, this guy is presidential caliber. He speaks with conviction. He speaks with no teleprompter. This guy's a badass, man. Green Beret, currently sits in the legislature in Virginia. He's not going to run there again. I am actually concerned that Nick will be one of the targets for the lunatics who took out Charlie Kirk, because Nick is a whole level above where Charlie Kirk was, and Charlie Kirk was on a very high plane. So this is some fantastic advice. He's joking around. He says, it's tough being John Lovell's hero, but here I am and I'm crushing it. Funny, haha. 2 minutes long. This is a really good dissertation on Nick's part. God, this guy, I'm telling you, he is insanely smart.
What would you say to those who would say, well, we live in a safe area. We don't need to think much of physical security. That's the job of law enforcement. What are we supposed to do as protectors for ourselves and our family?
So I'm having this conversation with this young woman, and she had just gotten engaged. And I said, this is awesome. Like, I want to encourage you, because marriage is wonderful. I love being married. And we start to talk a little bit, and I'm talking about like my role and me raising up my son and the things that I believe that men are responsible and husbands are responsible for. And she goes, oh, we don't really buy into those traditional gender roles. I said, oh, can I ask you a question? She goes, yeah. Let's say you and your fiance just had a wonderful dinner in Washington, D.C. And you're walking back out to your car in the parking lot. And then all of a sudden, a guy jumps out of the alleyway with a knife. Now, in one of these scenarios, your fiance jumps in between you and the assailant. And in the other scenario, he jumps behind you. Which version of your fiance would you like to marry? And she kind of looks at me, well, that's not really fair. No, it is. I am so tired of this idea that because it's not likely to happen, therefore you don't have to be prepared for it. The moment I asked my wife's dad and stepdad whether or not I could marry her, I assumed responsibility for her physical safety. Chances are nobody is ever going to threaten their lives in such a way to where I would have to intervene with physical force in order to stop it. But if it did happen, and I had to call another man to take care of it,
Nick would call me. I would save him.
I said a man. Anyway. Should you be able to handle yourself in a fight? Should you be able to use a firearm? Should your kids, should your wife be relatively certain that if anybody was going to try to mess with them, they would have to go through you, and they don't like the other guy's odds? That's not only good for physical security. Guys, can I just key you into something real quick? Your wives think it's really hot.
She will reward you for the protection you provide.
Oh, that's awesome. Randy, go to you first and get, he was a Green Beret like yourself. Just general thoughts on that little speech on his part.
Well, you know, it's funny how well logic works, right? I mean, it's logical and it makes sense. And again, you know, did anybody ever say, nobody's ever given that advice, oh, don't worry, it's probably never going to happen, so you don't have to worry about it. That's not necessarily true.
Right.
And again, certainly in today, we talk about how many criminals they allowed in the country and all the crime you see around. Well, you know, it just makes, I mean, what do you think? I like it. It's perfect because there's no argument for that when they constantly do this. I saw today something about, it's amazing how quickly they changed, you know, the direction of some of this stuff by just changing, you know, the word achievement to privilege.
Yeah.
And that's the difference, right?
Yeah, that's really well said, Randy. Jeff, thoughts on Nick Freitas?
Well, real quick, women don't think they like a manly man until they actually need one, and then they definitely like them.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
Okay. We lost Chris.
Yeah, I added you guys and didn't add myself. I imagine that. So up next is the reader submitted story of the day. This is from Tim Smith, one of our diehard members of our Guardian community. He's a member of the news team. One of the channels we have in Signal is called the Crusaders, and it's a read-only forum where people like Tim post all kinds of kick-ass news. He posted this one, and this is some good news here. Border czar Tom Homan announces DHS is looking into whether brotherfucker Ilman Ohar came to the U.S. illegally by marrying her brother. We're pulling the records. We're pulling the files. I'm running that down this week. We will see. 2 minutes, 24 seconds.
Mentioning the Daily Mail reporting from 2020 that Ilhan Omar married her brother to get into the country. This was last week. Take a listen.
Look at their nation. Look how bad their nation is. It's not even a nation. It's just people walking around killing each other. They've taken billions and billions of dollars. They have a representative, Ilhan Omar, who they say married her brother. It's a fraud.
Calls that a fraud. It's a story that has never been successfully refuted, even though it's now a 5-year-old story. That's clearly a deportable offense. Is there an investigation into that?
You know, I just got advised by a fraud investigator the other day on that. I asked the question, who reviewed the file, and says, there was immigration fraud involved. The statute of limitations became an issue in the last 4 years when this was first brought up. Who was president? Who ran DOJ? So pulling the records now, pulling the files, and we're looking at, but this fraud investigator, who I know personally, one of the best fraud investigators in HSI, Homeland Security Investigations, said there's no doubt he reviewed the file. So I'm running that down this week, matter of fact, and we'll see.
It's tremendous that, I mean, and according to the Secretary, Kristi Noem of DHS, she said nearly 50% of the visas are fraudulent in this community. I mean, that would mean that half the Somali refugees are here in some way illegally. What's going to happen? Is something's actually going to happen? Are there going to be people stripped of their visas, deported? Are we going to see that?
Absolutely. I mean, those days are over. Thank God President Trump's in the White House. We're going to look at all of them. I mean, we're going to look at those here illegally, of course. We're going to look at those here under a visa or some sort of, immigration process that are criminals. We're going to look at the national security threats. But those who came through a process that weren't properly vetted, who didn't provide documentation, who slipped through the Biden's weak processes on, giving visas and temporary, whether student visas or visitors visas or whatever. We're going the whole gamut. President Trump has instructed us go down and we're going to deep dive all of this. And we're going to hold people accountable. So yes, there are going to be multiple deportations coming. Absolutely.
There's so many claims of
Man, that's just awesome. Get both of your input. You first, Jeff, since you're center stage.
Well, he should, because if she violated the law, she needs to be held accountable for it. I don't care who she is or where she came from. The law's the law.
They say that marrying your brother's, not a thing that's frowned upon in Somalia.
No, they're inbred, so it's all tribal. You got to keep it in the tribe. And Europe's the same way. The royals of Europe, they're all married their cousins and crap anyway.
Yeah, where everybody's father's their favorite uncle.
Yep.
Randy.
Is that Uncle Daddy or what?
I don't know how. I don't know how that works. I'm clearly not from Somalia.
Well, I just want to see some accountability. I mean, the clearance there. There's all kinds of other stuff. And I think we touched on it last night, and not just in this one department. Man, it doesn't matter what we're talking about. There is so much evidence. There doesn't need to be any more investigations. Okay. Let's just start processing it. And apparently, heck, if we want to start with her, then let's do that. But if we don't hold these people accountable, we don't fix the voting by the midterms, we could be in real trouble.
Yeah, exactly. Well said, Randy. So I got a nasty gram 2 days ago from this supposed girl saying that she hated my guts because of my politics. She hates the way that I look. She hates the fact that I talk about comms videos or comms tools. She hates the fact that I bring up that I've, been to Mar-a-Lago in a joking sense. And my response to her was, well, you're a big girl now. You don't have to watch my podcast, so stop complaining. So in that vein, there's my new buddy, Nick Freitas, me at Mar-a-Lago right there. So that's just especially for the hater who sent me that email, by the way. So with that being said, we've got the conflicted question to go here. Let me get it up on stage. Here we go. Lieutenant Colonel Barone felt like he needed to rally his men around his cause to strengthen the bonds between them and himself. During his speech, he asked if being a patriot meant being loyal to one's country or one's government. Can you be a patriot if you're only loyal to either your country or government and not both? And Randy mentioned at the beginning, oh, by the way, hold on a second here. Alaska Forever North, again, thank you, sir. We really appreciate your support. Randy, I'm coming to you first on this one.
Well, as we all know, right, we have a constitution for a reason, and our all of our forefathers thought this out thoroughly, and there's a reason for that. You can only be a patriot if you are loyal to your country, right? Which would be our constitutional republic. Being loyal to the government, it could be a tyrannical government. Does that make you a patriot because you're loyal to a tyrannical government? No, it does not. No, it does not.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Randy. Very, very well said. Jeff?
Governments come and go. Countries are forever, or not forever, but should be. No, I don't care about the government so much as I am the country.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with both of you. So there's not a whole lot for me to add other than, you know, I wouldn't consider myself even remotely loyal to Obama, Hillary, Joe Biden, or any of those people at all, but definitely loyal to America. So with that being said, just want to give one more shout out to our sponsors. So our premier sponsor, of course, is Carnival, carnival.com. You can see Randy's wearing a Carnival hat, as well as he's got a Carnival shirt behind him as well. And if you use code EATMEAT, all one word, yeah, see, that just screwed the link up. So hold on a second. I made a bit of a mistake there when I put it in there. Okay, here we go. Eat meat. Pardon me, but I can't rub my belly and pat my head and do all this at the same time. There you go. Here it comes. Carnival.com. Use the discount code EATMEAT to get 10% off on everything except for subscriptions. They're already carved to the bone as far as margins concerned. But what you get from Carnival is 100% American across the board. The bag's made in America. The O2 absorber's made in America. The meat is 100% American. So carnival.com, the beef in particular is just outstanding. There's no mRNA, no antibiotics, no histamines in any of their meats. Their beef is grass finished, not just grass fed. If it's grass fed, doesn't say grass finished, it means they porked them up on grain for the past, the last few weeks of their life. These guys are frigging all American, awesome to deal with. And they've got a Christmas thing going on right now. Every $100 that you spend at Carnival between now and December 23rd, you get a virtual raffle ticket. 5 people are going to be chosen the next day, December 24th, that are going to win a prize package, a bunch of Carnival meat products, bunch of Carnival swag, and everybody's getting the same. So it's 5 first place people. It's kind of like a participation trophy, just different. In addition to the Carnival stuff, I'm going to give those 5 winners lifetime subscriptions to the Survival Dispatch Guardians program. And other than that, I mean, this stuff is impossible to keep on the shelf here. It's meant for preppers, no refrigeration required. This one, 6 ounces of beef reconstitutes to 1.5 pounds of steak. I mean, I can't keep it in stock. I mean, my wife gives me shit all the time, but it's so damn good. I can't help it. I got to eat it. The next one that I want to share, of course, is Wasatch Wagyu. Mentioned them already. They're flat strips of jerky. Like, it's all good. The sticks are good as well, but golly, there's no jerky out there that compares. And there's the link. Just put it in the live chat for everybody. And the discount code for them is SD15, gets you 15% off. And these are another, it's another hardcore American. He actually lives close to Mike Glover, Heber City, Utah. Can't say enough good things about him. But golly, other than that, I think we've done it all now, boys. We're done. for tonight. We'll be back tomorrow night with the next episode in our long war series, and it's titled The Next Pearl Harbor. I'm not going to give you any more details than that. You'll find out tomorrow night. And again, as Khalid mentioned, he'll be back with us next week. Can't wait to have him back. Between now and tomorrow night, please like, share, comment, and subscribe. God bless America.
God bless America.
Enjoy the most requested closing video for Survival Dispatch News.